Yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready to begin. My name is Linda Rammler, and I work at the University of Connecticut Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. We are doing the third in a series of webinars about building a great life, otherwise known as BAGEL. And this particular presentation is called Building a Livable Community Through Friendships, Relationships, and Belonging. And we have a great panel here tonight who are going to be talking about some of their experiences and some of the things that we think are very important to people who are watching this webinar in terms of what they might be considering for friendships, relationships, and belonging as ways to build a livable community and a great life. So without further ado, Mikayla, would you like to start?
Hi, my name is Mikayla Hoskins, and I'm from the state of New York. And people who are important to me is my fiance and his family. How I develop these relationships is I met my fiance at the Self-Advocacy Association of New York State statewide conference. He actually, I met him in the hallway of that conference, and he actually yelled he wanted to date a younger woman. And that's how my relationship developed. What these relationships mean to me is how he loves me very much, my fiance, and his family cares about me, and that's how I develop relationship with him and his family. How I keep these relationship is I call him every day on telephone, video chat, and other social media things that we do on the phone. Or I seen him during the beginning of August. His mom came up and visit with me and my fiance. This is a group of self-advocates that are protesting because about the New York budget cuts that they are happening in New York. We are protesting to state legislators and assembly people in New York not to cut our services in New York. And I am in the picture, but I am behind other self-advocates, and we are still protesting in New York about the cuts at this time.
Mikayla, can I just ask you a quick question? Are you involved with the self-advocacy movement in New York?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do with your friends there?
I am a self-advocacy board member in New York. I actually go out and advocate for people with developed disabilities, and we actually go to meet with legislators and meet with other self-advocacy groups. And one issue is about the budget cuts. The other issue is about the DSP minimum wage and how the DSPs deserve above the minimum wage because they work hard in this field and they deserve above the minimum wage. This is a picture. These are two pictures of me and my fiance. We've been dating for 5 years, and we've been engaged for 4 years, and we love each other so much. And in the future, I will move down to Long Island and spend the rest of my life with my fiance, and I care about him.
Thank you. Zach Rossetti, would you like to go next?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here or watching the webinar. I am in Boston. I work at Boston University in the Teaching and Learning Department. I'm an associate professor of special ed. And I'm going to be focusing on the importance of friendships. I think most everyone would agree, if we're talking about building a great life, that friendships are key to that. Whether you have, whether you're incredibly social and have a wide social circle, or a couple of close friends like I tend to do, those social connections are really critical. So I'll be talking about friendships, relationships, and belonging in the community, disability considerations, and building a livable community. So I think, in short, friendship matters. And I think most people would agree. I think what I'm going to do is to give you some additional reasons why, in case, in terms of policy or practices, an agency or an organization maybe isn't focusing on the social aspect of life as much as you think they should. So friendship works on a couple of levels. When you have friends, people of all ages, when they have friends, there are benefits in terms of improved or positive emotional well-being and sense of belonging and sense of self, and fewer depressive symptoms, etc. But friendships, people who have friends make more developmental gains as well. And the cool thing about it is that the relationship itself is the vehicle that facilitates those developmental gains. When you're with your friends, whether it's through their modeling or peer pressure, which is not necessarily a bad thing, you're experiencing new things in life and learning more together. Learning is, I think, definitely social. So there are many gains when you have friends as well. People who have friends or let me say, friendship acts as a buffer against bullying, victimization, being a victim of bullying, but also perpetration. So if you have a friend, you're less likely to bully someone else. And then, as many folks in the disability world have said for decades, inclusive friendships and inclusive communities enrich all of our lives and create and expand upon community in terms of being more caring, more inclusive, more welcoming of all people. Specific to students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, which is where I focus in my research, and it extends to adults as well. Though friendship is important, it's not often happening or as much as we would like for individuals with IDD. So some of those benefits aren't always experienced by the people we love and care about. So at all ages, people with intellectual disability tend to interact with family or paid staff or others with intellectual disability, which is fine if that's their choice. But often the key issue is, because of the way the services are structured or the way one's life is at the moment, it may not be their choice, or they haven't had an opportunity to meet others. Specific to autism, same thing. People might have a friend, but overall, compared to non-disabled people, they might have fewer and lower quality friendships, meaning like shorter or more tumultuous, less companionship. And in a recent research study that I worked on in, this was elementary school, the students with intellectual and developmental disabilities actually had more classroom interactions, but they were predominantly with the adults in the room, their paraprofessional or teacher or therapist, compared to other kids in the classroom. So these were inclusive classrooms. So they were part of the class, accepted in the general ed classroom for most of the day. And just being there, just being included alone didn't inherently result in friendship opportunities that would result in them interacting more with their peers. And I always, when I talk about friendship, have to say a little bit about my brother, Todd, who was an amazing guy. I'm the oldest of 6 in my family. Todd was the 4th Rossetti of us. He was a huge Boston Red Sox and Bruins and Patriots and Celtics fan. He loved sports. He had a huge sweet tooth. He loved chocolate cake. There was a dessert at the 99 restaurant, I think, called, where we often went, I think it was called the Midnight Towering Fudge Oreo cake, or I don't know, something like that. And he devoured it. And he's not a huge guy. We used to say he had like a hollow leg or something to put it in. And he was incredibly outgoing. And the type of person who, when he was in a social setting, a classroom or a cocktail party or something, like everybody, like he was magnetic. Everyone would come over, everyone would know him by the end of the night. And I do this for a living. I'm comfortable talking to large crowds in this professional format. But if I were at that same cocktail party, I would be nervous, and I'd probably only talk to people I already knew. I have a hard time meeting new people. And it was remarkable because I especially because due to his cerebral palsy, he didn't speak, and he uses a wheelchair, as you can see, and needs lots of supports throughout his day. So being able to be that social and connect without speaking was one of many lessons that he taught me. And specific to friendship, he was always well known and maybe one of the most popular, if not the most popular student in his grade or school, which was amazing. But then as I kind of grew up and paid a little more attention, I realized that he didn't often receive calls at home, or you know, no one from school came over. And so he was accepted and included, but he was never befriended. And so that dynamic was really interesting. And I think part of what we want you to walk away with tonight is, how do we get to authentic friendship? And I think all of the stories and strategies will help us get there. One key to getting to authentic friendship, I think, is that context matters. Authentic friendships, even though I just said they don't often happen, they can and should and do happen, and include strong personal connections like any friendship does. And I think in terms of context, one of the critical pieces is that in in the situation where students with and without intellectual and developmental disabilities or who have significant needs, the key factor in the friendship developing was they had opportunities to get to know each other, to do something together in an inclusive setting over time. Regardless of social skills, behaviors, etc. And you know, in the research that I've done, or I did a literature review as well, and so others studies in which people with and without intellectual and developmental disabilities became friends, we still had very, very significant needs, like my brother Todd did, for example. So it wasn't that someone learned social skills through a social skills training program and then finally were ready for friendship. People said, regardless of one's skills, everyone is a human being, and regardless of label, and deserves social opportunities. And that really is a critical piece. And if you're an adult, that means in the community as well. I think we can go to the next slide. The other part of context that matters is that sometimes when there's a disability label, we focus on that a little bit too much. And that's why we get a lot of social skills programs and special clubs or friendship clubs or programs, such as Best Buddies and some others, as strategies to facilitate friendship, just focusing on the disability part. The important part of the context of authentic, true, meaningful friendship is that there are at least two people. There are two or more people in every friendship pair or group. And so what we've been learning and what we want to share today is that focusing on the roles of both people in the friendship is absolutely critical. And in some of those friendships that I've been mentioning, the non-disabled friends, in addition to getting to know their friend with a disability, learned about their friend's support needs, and learned to help them out or provide those supports in a natural manner so that they could be friends. So if someone was going to be friends with my brother Todd, and they wanted to go out for dinner and a movie, he can't move his arms very well. And so someone would need to help him eat the dinner. And you would know to order something that was easy to chew, because he would choke if it wasn't, or maybe to cut it up in small pieces. When the wait person, even before eating, would come over, unless they know someone with a disability, they're likely to turn to me or the non-disabled friend and say, oh, what does he want to eat? And so part of what a friend does is to say, well, ask him. he can tell you, or he has a way to show you, but talk to him. And then to maybe push his wheelchair, find an accessible seat in the movie theater, etc. These are all things that a support person might do, but in a friendship, a friend can learn to do. And he doesn't speak, like I said, but he can answer questions if you give him choices. We use a whiteboard or hold up our hands. And so the friend would learn to do that, would learn to wait, give him the wait time to respond. So these are all things that are much more important than you know, some of the social skills programs that only focus on people with disabilities. And then in a school setting, and I think it can hold true in the community as well, the role of the support person or the adult teacher is also important. In the school setting in particular, where I tend to focus, students who are perceived as being liked by their teachers are more likely to be liked by their peers. And so sometimes teachers, you know, even in an inclusive classroom, the general ed teacher might ignore the student with a disability. We know other studies where, you know, a white teacher might yell at a student of color for doing the same thing that a white student did. And these all have negative consequences. The other kids in the class see all these things, and they're less likely to want to be friends with someone unless there's that adult acceptance and kind of modeling of talking to someone and being respectful and being inclusive. And similarly, but the flip side, students with disabilities who shared more positive interactions with teachers were more likely to be viewed as popular by their peers. So I have a couple more slides, I think, that focus on what we mean by authentic friendship. I've been saying it, so we should define it or describe it. These first 4 characteristics are the friendship characteristics for all people with or without a disability. These tend to be the characteristics in young people's friendship, children and youth, or in a friendship that's just starting out. So in terms of proximity and similarity, we all we all become friends with people that we see a lot, whether it's in class, in the community, at school. That's why clubs or activities are important. And we all become friends generally with those we share interests with. So if you like chess, the chess club. If you like sports, playing a sport, being a manager, going to watch a game together. If you like music, being in the chorus or being in the band or going to see a concert, etc. And these are the core strategies, or can be the core strategies for supporting friendship development. Authentic friendship takes place in more than one setting. That means it transcends context. So as I said, Todd had lots of people in school that came up to him and said hi or gave him a high five. A parent I know who has a child who also has cerebral palsy, CP, said that her child is similarly, what did she describe it as? Extremely high-fived in school. Then no one ever kind of calls him at home. So that's great. It could be the start of an authentic friendship, but we know it would be authentic friendship when it's in school and at home, in the neighborhood or in the community. That makes sense? And like, we have work friends, you know, you cross the next level when you like do something, go to dinner or a movie, do something social with a work friend rather than just seeing them at work. You can go to the next slide. These characteristics are in friendships that develop over time and in young adult and in adult friendships. And I'm not going to talk about all of them right now. Some of them are just kind of signs of authentic friendship. If you look in the middle there, conflict management. If you're really friends with someone, you can disagree, you can even get in a fight, but you'll eventually make up and still be friends. In the beginning, maybe it's not quite as strong a friendship, and that might end a relationship if you get in a fight. So these are kind of signs of that. I want to highlight the first 3, I think. Friendships are give and take relationships, so that means they're reciprocal. And there's a balanced exchange of social interaction. So before I said a non-disabled friend might learn to support their friend with a disability in whatever way they need. A friend with a disability might not support me to eat my dinner because that's something I can do on my own. So reciprocity doesn't mean equal or the same type of support, It is a give and take, because even though someone might provide physical support to my brother Todd, he might provide emotional support in the relationship or humor. And so it's balanced that way. And that's a really nice thing in relationships between people with and without disabilities. Mutuality is a big one, and it means that both people choose to be in the relationship. They identify each other as friends. And this is where groups and friendship clubs like Best Buddies are a little problematic, because non-disabled students or adults sometimes join these. So it looks good on their resume, and they join it to maybe help out, which is great. They don't know the person yet. And so they might get to know someone in that club and eventually be friends. But to assume that everyone will just be a friend because they're paired up together as buddies is, I think, unrealistic and kind of disrespectful in terms of the mutuality. So I think we can move on, Linda. It's Tim's turn. Tim, can you unmute yourself?
I think I accidentally remuted you. There
we
you
go.
go. Sorry about that.
Yeah. My name is Tim,
Hi, my name is Tim.
and I am yeah.
And I am
I am yeah.
I'm an associate of Zach.
Yeah. We met at the
We met at BU in 2015.
yeah.
It might have been a little earlier. Well, we started hanging out more in 2015, I think. Yeah.
And then yeah.
Then over the years, I invited you, is that,
Yeah.
to co-teach the class.
Yeah.
An introduction, well, the course is called Disability Education and Public Policy at BU. And it's an introduction to special education course.
And now they
Throughout my academic career,
yeah.
I missed the beginning, Tim. I'm sorry. It ended with Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yeah.
I've studied the ADA a lot.
Yeah.
didn't follow that, Tim. Do you mind repeating?
I have a background in rehabilitation counseling.
I have a background in rehabilitation counseling.
Yes. Thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you for letting me be here.
Um,
Can I just add one thing, Tim?
yeah.
That you have 2 master's degrees, including one at from BU,
Yeah.
and were a Gopin Fellow, I think, in 2010 or 11 at the
Yeah.
Institute for Community Inclusion at UMass Boston,
Yeah.
and have been a longtime advocate in the Massachusetts disability community, and were named to what advisory board recently? Massachusetts, I missed the middle, something council. MBTA.
Yeah.
So no, oh, the PCA,
Yeah.
who advise about policy and related to personal care attendants.
Yeah. Yeah.
While at BU, you found no. Wrote a paper about transit.
No. Yeah.
Oh, you wrote a paper about friendship,
Yeah.
which makes sense because that's what we're focusing on. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. Should we read what you wrote?
Yeah.
All right, and we'll read what you wrote. You wrote this ahead of time. Even though my family was very supportive in my education and development, there have been a number of people throughout my life that have been instrumental and encouraging in their own way. First of these people I met on my ride to school on a van while I was driven to school. Ned happened to have Down syndrome, something that I did not understand until later in life. Ned and I developed a friendship on that 90-minute ride to our respective schools. During that time, Ned would sing the scores to a number of Broadway plays or talk to his buddy, Big Tim. I considered him to be my brother, and I remember being very concerned when he underwent heart surgery. It was never a big deal for his mom to help me at McDonald's when we got together. I used to receive a Christmas card from his mom. Last I heard, Ned was living in a group home and thriving in his community. Ned gave me an understanding of a disability other than my own. The second person that had an influence on me was John, who I happened to meet at summer camp. John had CP like me, and he was attending Marist College in New York. John was a few years older than I was, but out of all of the other campers in that session, I could relate to him the most. About a decade later, when I was exploring the possibility of independent living, my personal care attendant, Mary Ann, happened to mention that there was an independent living center near her, and she took me to it. When I got there, it was amazing. The man that I met with was John. He listened to my predicament, told me that I was not crazy, and empowered me to move on to Ramapo College's campus. The third individual that had a dramatic influence on my life was Jim. Jim, a fellow who I had become acquainted with at camp and was attentive enough to notice that I was almost drowning in the crowded pool, was going for his doctorate in outdoor recreation at Columbia U in the early 1980s. The focus of his work was to evaluate the recreational interests of the folks at camp and then provide them with a list of recreation opportunities available to them in their communities. In the world before the information superhighway, Jim's project was quite an undertaking for the ever vibrant young man with the infectious, yes you can attitude towards life. When Jim had an opportunity to train outward bound staff and alumni how to adapt their highly challenging programs for people with physical disabilities, he inquired if a friend and I would be willing to be part of a weekend to train these folks. Of course, I could not pass up this offer. The early fall weekend was quite exciting, and I thrived and did my best to meet any kind of challenge. I quickly made friends and felt that it was a family environment. This experience instilled me with so much confidence and a natural high for life. It propelled me to go for it in many aspects of my life. A few years later, I was motivated to challenge myself by entering high school and ultimately pursue higher education. The fourth individual that had an influence on my life was my parish priest, Father Pat, late vocation to the priesthood and an Irish immigrant. Father Pat encouraged my parents to get me involved in the religious education classes, enabling me to receive first penance, communion, and confirmation. When I was being confirmed, I wanted to take the name of Patrick after my friend. Because the bishop could not understand me, I ended up with 7 names. Father Pat realized that I did not have the opportunities of the other boys in the parish. He made me an altar boy at daily mass and became one of my best friends. He was one of the first people who would have me for overnights at the rectory, took me on rides to New York City, Bear Mountain, Washington, D.C., among other places, simply because he wanted to extend his hand in friendship to me. Father Pat assisted in mapping my first trip to Boston University. I have been able to maintain each of the relationships mentioned above for most of my life. Each individual has really understood me, challenged my way of thinking, and empowered me to be the best that I can be. I value their opinion, and I have made it a point to keep them involved on my every milestone. People,
Our pleasure, Tim. Okay, so now it's my turn. And I'm going to talk a little bit about not just the importance of friendships, but also some of the how-tos in terms of allowing people without disabilities to intentionally create some of those opportunities that Zach was talking about and that Tim had run into and that Mikayla was fortunate enough to find at a conference. This is my friend Hope Locke, who, as you can see, is a very close friend of mine. And we had met because her mother was on the board of Tash New England, and Hope became a friend very, very quickly. I wish I saw her more, but the pandemic has kind of thrown a wrench into that gear. But anyway, Hope is just a delightful person, and it was really great to see her last about right before the pandemic, I guess, when I went to see her niece with her and her sister at one of the schools in Connecticut on her niece's ice hockey team, where she was awesome. Probably the most important topic, though, I want to talk about is this idea of social capital. And those are social relations that have productive benefits above and beyond some of the things that Zach had been talking about before. One of the things that I usually do when I'm doing workshops on this is have people complete what we call a circle of support. Who is in their circle? Who do you want to add? The inner circle, the blue circle, are the people that you really have those intimate, reciprocal, close kinds of relationships that Zach was talking about before. And they can either be members of your family, they can be true friends that you have over the course of your life, or they can be paid staff who are really close to you. The green circle are people that you're more of acquainted with. And I guess what you had said that mom said about her son being an expert high fiver, or the high five, whatever the term was, would fall into that place, because they're people that you know well, but you're not really in an intimate reciprocal kind of relationship with them. And the pink areas are basically family members that you barely see, maybe once a year at a family picnic. There's social connections that, like Zach said, the people at the party that may end up with him, but that he doesn't really talk to. And then the paid staff who are in your life. What too many of supports for people with disabilities look like is this heavily weighted on the staff side. Very few people in the actual inner circles of friendship, or even in the high five area of friendship. And most of the people who know them are people who are very casual acquaintances. And even in families, families have often split from close connections with extended family members for whatever reason. Sometimes it's the time involved in taking people to different therapies and so on. Sometimes it's because, unfortunately, they're actually rejected by their family, particularly in certain cultures. But the bottom line is this is heavily weighted on the paid staff side. And if you ask a lot of people with disabilities, these are the people that they believe to be their friends, because they see the most and they're, I want to say, tolerated most by these individuals. But it's, again, not a reciprocal close relationship. So if you fill that out for yourself, hopefully it's rich. But we also want to do is to have people really intentionally try to build up that inner circle of people who fall under the social friendship category. One of the ways to do that is to use an associational map that was developed by a community organizer named John McKnight. And this is where you actually look at things in your community for things that have people that have common interests with you and have formed an association that you can become a member of, because shared interests are clearly, as Zach mentioned in the research, one of the things that really kind of cement the relationships, at least initially. And then over time, you can expand your horizons and go into other places and so on. But usually the first hook is that common interest, and having an associational map so that somebody who's interested in art can look at what's in their community related to art. What if they're into helping other people, what kinds of volunteer opportunities are there where they can meet other people? If they're interested in politics, how can they connect with a political party or get involved in a campaign and those types of things? So this is a tool that people can use, again, based on individual strengths, interests, and preferences, to find things in their community that are good opportunities to connect the person who may have less people in their inner social circle with, who potentially can become more intensive friendship and actually have a true reciprocal relationship with somebody. There's also another tool, 75 Actions That Build Communities, that was developed by John O'Brien, and John and his wife, Connie Lyle O'Brien, have been instrumental in a lot of person-centered opportunities for people to really connect and build communities with each other. And this list was taken from a larger list that John kind of pared down. And these are little things to do to meet and get to know others. And they range from things like things we can't do during the pandemic, but things that involve like bringing some cake over to a neighbor, or seeing somebody struggling with packages in your neighborhood and you shop at the same store and you see them regularly and offering to help. And those little things help to build community, because over time you become seen as somebody who's not only friendly yourself, but also somebody who cares about other people and is perceived to be somebody that could be of value, whether it's because of the humor or because of just caring for another person, that these little things can actually really help make some of those connections. And what I also found in public school settings, like Zach, I spent a lot of years working with school children, and I'm not uploading the video, but I have a lovely video that was developed by second graders for a particular school. And the strategies that we used, and then I'll tell you the outcome of having done this a couple of years later, is that we combined 3 second grade classes in the library, and we actually had them experience disabilities. And the message was not how these poor kids can live with disabilities, but rather, did you change as a human being just because you were using a wheelchair? Were you any different just because you had to guess what was in the bag and couldn't see it? How did you feel when you were reading a computer manual and couldn't understand it because you're only in second grade? But did that change who you really are at your core? Did that change who you are as a person? And obviously the consensus with the kids was no, it didn't change who they were. And they got to understand that just because somebody has a disability doesn't change their humanity and the gifts that they have to offer. So then we did individual classes with those 3 second grade classes, and we read the same positive stories to each group about children with disabilities interacting with other children with disabilities. And again, asking, did it change who you are? Do you think someone who has the experiences all the time, is that different from you? And then the third step was to brainstorm with each of those individual classes anything they could think about with a particular student that I was involved with, whose name was Michelle. And they literally brainstormed all sorts of things that they could do with her. And we recorded the answers on large sheets of paper with watercolor markers. And each idea was typed at the bottom of a page by a facilitator, which was me. And then I passed out each individual page with the line of text that the kids had offered, and they were given a page to illustrate. Michelle illustrated the cover. And then the pages were put together into chapters by topic, because the kids were first getting introduced to chapter books. They were able to read the things that they had written on their own. Each page had a single line and an illustration to support it. And they actually read the chapter books. And some years later, they were still reading the chapter book that they developed to some of the younger kids in their school. And what was interesting, all the time I was doing this, was the kids kept saying, what about this other child with a disability? And what about this other child with a disability? And what about this other child with a disability? And so the message had to consistently be, this applies to everyone. It's not just Michelle. It's anybody that you see, anybody who you may think is different from you. Know that inside, they're human beings just like you. They have gifts just like you. They have interests, preferences, passions just like you do. And it was a really strong message, and one that I was very pleased to see carried over, in that 4 years later, I was walking in the school to do another visit of Michelle, and I walked by a group of kids lined up to go into the library. And I always pay attention to that, because you need to know what's hot and what's not that kids are talking about. And I heard these girls talking about hair things and whose mother bought what and what their favorite colors were, and yakety, 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 yak. And I turned around just to kind of see who it was. And one of the young ladies was Michelle, who, when we did this thing for her in second grade, was not very verbal and didn't speak a lot and didn't have a lot of social interactions with her friends. So to see that kind of real connection and friendship that it developed was just amazing. And we know we can do that with lots of other kids too. So we do develop circles of friends for kids, which is intentionally to recruit people from their class to say, would you like to have a pizza lunch? If they're a little bit older, that always works. And if they're younger, it's like, who would like to play with my really cool Brio train set, or whatever the thing that's fascinating to kids at a particular age group is. And we sit and we talk to them about, and the child with a disability can be part of that group if they choose to, but we talk about things that they have in common and things that they like. And we don't say you need to be part of this group, but if you'd like to, there's some games and things that we can do. And if you don't like to, maybe you know another person who's in your circle of support, circle of friends, who might want to be friends with this young man here. And this was the outcome at fourth grade level with these kids that they were actually playing a board game in school together, which is pretty phenomenal when you consider that one of them has autism and is not supposed to want to interact with other people, but very engaged in this board game. And actually later is in this class in the upper left-hand corner of these photos, bending in. He's the one in the green sweatshirt. I usually make people guess which one he is and they always guess wrong, but he's bending in and he's connecting with those other kids and they're looking something up on a cell phone together because they didn't really have a computer with internet access and so on, but they were checking vocabulary terms and so on, and he's right in there. And what was really cool with them is their favorite game that they wanted to carry with them from elementary to middle school was called the can game. And they would literally lie on the floor in a carpeted area of the library and pass a tin can with their feet from one person to the other. And the rule was if somebody dropped it, they had to help pick it up. And so this young man tended to drop it a little bit more than other people did, but it was okay because the game was to keep the can going. And so having those kind of new game, non-competitive type opportunities for kids to have fun was really critical. As Zach had mentioned, focusing on the other kids, this is a young man that I know who also is on a spectrum and types to communicate. And this happens to be my niece, Madeline, who is one of those people that also lights up a room and just decided she was going to be friends. They went swimming together. They showered after they swam. They went showered, and now they're having pizza and they're carrying on a conversation together. In this situation, this is a young man who actually had friends over because we had his parents feel comfortable with having a play date. And this group of people, young adults, basically were on a team in a high school. And at the end of the season, you know, a lot of times people are included in teams, but they're not really allowed to play. They're like the water boy or the scorekeeper and so on. And this guy suited up for every single game and was always allowed to play at least one play in the football game. And at the end of the season, his team actually sacrificed I don't know anything about NCAA playing those types of things, but they sacrificed their ability to move up in the league or whatever it was so that he could play most of the last quarter of the game because they cared that much about him. It was the last game he was ever going to play because he was graduating from high school. This young lady wowed everybody climbing the climbing wall, broke gender biases down because none of the other little girls her age, she's actually more like 12 years old or 13 years old, wanted to do this because they weren't supposed to climb and be athletic. Apparently that gender message had sunk in, but she just wowed everybody by climbing right up there and was fearless about it. So the other little girls followed suit. And this little boy's mom had arranged a play date at McDonald's, and the two kids are playing together and interacting beautifully. They actually connected with some older kids because they decided to borrow their toys when the older kids went on the playscape, and the older kids came back and there was this whole group of people playing with the toy that was a common interest to all of them. And here we have a picture that I actually pulled off the internet, but it's very typical for some people that I know who are in college settings who aren't doing the best buddy thing, but the young adult is actually taking college classes as part of like a Think College program, and everybody is friends. They're in the same class together, they do the same kinds of activities together, and they chill in the dorm and watch movies together, that's what friendship's all about. So I'm done with my section. Like I said, I think you have to do, before I go to Josh, I just want to close by saying what's really important is a lesson that I learned from Marcia Forrest and Jack Pierpoint some years ago, which is intentionality, that you have to create these opportunities intentionally, but it's like a romantic dinner. When you want to have a romantic dinner, you do things like candlelight and you cook a special meal. You don't order from Uber to bring a McDonald's dish to your home. You have candlelight, you get rid of the kids, you have a babysitter. All these things happen intentionally because you want to have a romantic dinner. But what could happen is your babysitter doesn't show up, so your kids are running around the house. The dinner that you were carefully preparing burns in the oven, sets off the smoke detector or the water sprinklers in your apartment. The candles burn out before you're ready to eat, and the bottle of wine you open turns out to be sour. That's just a failed attempt. You go back and do it again. You don't give up. And that's the same with some of creating these intentional opportunities for kids to connect. You don't give up. If it doesn't work the first time, you go back and try it again. Maybe you didn't have the right activity. Maybe the kids were nervous because there was an upcoming test or something like that. So you keep trying. And I've never been in a situation where I have not been able, in a public school setting or in an adult setting with people at work, been able to create intentionally an initial community. And over time, people become friends. And I think that's, again, you can't just wait for it to happen magically on its own, because people may be a little nervous around somebody with a disability, or maybe hasn't gotten the message that inside you all have gifts and strengths and interests and passions that are comparable, and you're more alike than different. So I'm going to shut up, and it's going to be your turn, Josh Mears, to close this up and talking about your life and your relationships. So are you ready, Josh?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
Hi, I'm Josh Mears. This is about my life. My organization's Lions Club, People's First of Connecticut, Church of My Community, a car club member. I'm a member of the Lions Club since 2012. I recently became People's First Vice President, and I've been in my church member since I moved to my town of Wheelock, Connecticut. I've been a car club member since 2009, which I'm also the vice president of my car club. All about me, Josh Mears. I'm a member of my community. I help out in my community. I'm a DJ company owner. I DJ a lot of events, a car club member, of which I've been since a long time. Friends to lots of people. I'm an uncle. I have 2 nieces and a nephew who accept me for who I am and about my disability. My biggest business is my girlfriend. I was a little bit scared at first. A lot of people with disabilities could get taken advantage of. Like, you know, let's say you had a girlfriend and she says, "Oh, let me use your ATM card. Let me use your credit card." And that's one of the main reasons why you gotta be careful of a relationship, because you don't know who the girlfriend could be. You don't know if you could trust her or not. Because, you know, some people, you know, say, "Oh, you can trust me," but you find out the hard way. You get a bill in the mail. And my family's accepted me, and the girlfriend that I met here, I met her at an old job place. We reconnected about a month ago, and we've been beginning to date a lot now. So we're going on another date this weekend. We're going to the movies. People's First. I'm the vice president. IT technology person. I am the representative of People's First. I help out with the website and Facebook page, and I represent them. I attend Teams meeting calls, software training school, and I'm the vice president of the club. I got elected as the vice president of the People's First of Connecticut. Friendships. Making friends and keeping them always are a good thing. Like this. This is one of my rescue people that take me out, and I met her family, and I became friends with them for many, many years, and now we go out to a lot of good fun places. How I make friends by talking to them, ask questions of them, and get to know them. I ask to meet up for coffee, lunch, or go to a movie or a park or for a walk. Why should everyone have friendships and how to keep a friendship? Show them how to become independent. Like, you know, show them how to live on their own, go shopping, how to take a public transportation. Friends can help. They always can help. They always help me. Go with them if they need it. If they need help, like say if they're going for an apartment and they want your opinion, you go with them and, you know, say yes, it's good, or no, it's not a good one, and help solve problems. Like if they have a problem with issue with their girlfriend or family or out in the community. My contact information is right here, and we do have our website up and running. It's good so far. We just hired a person to redo our website, which is going to be in the works very, very soon.
Okay. We're not going to go into questions and discussion unless the panel wants to say anything, but this is really great that we were able to pull this together tonight. And I want to personally stop sharing for a second and bring up the panels. And want to thank Mikayla, and let's see, I want to go in order, Zach and Tim and Josh, for being a participant in tonight's panel. And I think really giving some people some things to think about in terms of building a great life through friendships and connections with their communities. So on that note, I want to say good night to everyone. And I am going to turn off the recording. Thank you very much.
Thank you.